A little over a month ago, I bought this 2013 Toyota Sienna to live out of full-time. I wanted to make it as comfortable as I possibly could. That was the goal. And until just this last week, I've really been feeling like I've been camping more than living out of this van because things were not set up very well. But this last week I've made some major improvements, and let me show you them. I'm pretty excited about it. So if you're new here, my name is Scott, and this is my YouTube channel, StaticCampervan. And this is the big upgrade behind me here, although this is just one of many big upgrades I've made over this past week. But this is the big one that was kind of hinging on everything else coming into place. So these are brand new solar panels, brand new to the market. These are Renogy Shadowflux solar panels. I bought two of them and installed two of them on my roof here. They're permanently installed. I have them kind of mounted to some crossbars. The crossbars are, of course, mounted to the factory roof rails. And you can see that they're mounted a little bit strangely. I'll talk a little bit more about that later on in the video, but they are mounted really solid and well. I wanted to have them good and solid because if I do drive down the road, I don't want them flying off. And so this is the way that I came up with mounting them. Not real crazy about the Harbor Freight crossbars, but the rest of the whole structure is very solid. You can see I can shake on this and they're not going anywhere. Stainless steel fasteners and also the rails here that are running down the length of the solar panels, kind of tying them together. This is a piece of unistrut or superstrut, as it's called sometimes. This is structural steel, and it is hot dip galvanized, so it's good for an outdoor environment. And then for fasteners, I actually went with stainless steel bolts and lock nuts, just to make sure everything was good and solid. Now, if you're not familiar with superstrut or unistrut, this is material that you can get at any home center. You'll find this in the electrical aisle normally, and they sell it with a bunch of different components so that you can piece it together. The superstrut or unistrut normally comes in 10-foot long lengths if you do buy it at Home Depot like I did. And then depending on the Home Depot that you go to, they'll have different pieces that you can use to tie the pieces of superstrut or unistrut together. So I'm using some of the washers that the Home Depot here sold. They also have L brackets and things. So the idea is that you can just cut this unistrut to size and then use the brackets that they sell to kind of piece it together and build whatever you need to build out of this really good, strong material. So it was important to me to have a good amount of structure to hold these panels in place, because they are brand new panels I just bought. Now, these panels are made by a company called Renogy, and they are new to the market. They're a new technology. The difference with these panels versus other types of panels is that these panels produce power even if a considerable amount of the panel is shaded. And that was something that was important to me because I spend most of my time up in the Pacific Northwest and in Northern California, where it's often rainy. Now, today I'm in Los Angeles, so we've got lots of sunshine, but when I first got these installed, it was pretty rainy. We had some dark days out, and even in those really dark periods of rain, these panels are producing a considerable amount of power. In fact, so much power that I was just shocked to see how much power that they were delivering even on such a dark day in the rain. So these are 200-watt panels. Renogy sells two of these Shadowflux panels at the moment. They have a 200-watt version and a 120-watt version. And because I've got this new van that's a bit bigger than my last van, I had a lot more roof space, so I opted for the 200-watt variety. They fit pretty good width-wise, and then I do probably have room for a third 200-watt panel, as you can see here, just because this van has a lot of roof space, in part because of the size of the van and in part because I did something a little different with my vents here. I didn't go with a regular RV vent like I did with my last van, but I went with these Max Air dome vents. I think that's the name of them. I always forget. They're not a great fan, but they are a good vent, and because they sit low, it means that I have all this space for solar panels above them. So that's why I went with these in mind, that I wanted as much solar on the roof here. The surprising thing though is that these panels put out so much power that I'm not sure I'm going to add a third panel, which is what I was thinking I was going to. I'm pretty happy with the 400 watts that I have now, just because these panels perform so well in such differing conditions, that I think 400 watts, at least using these Shadowflux panels, is going to be plenty of power for me. So I managed to get a little bit lucky when it came to drilling the holes through the roof to drop the power cords down through. I did have to drill one hole, but there was actually another hole, factory hole, already available in the roof. There was a little powered antenna spot here. Since I didn't have a power antenna, I just removed the little cover for that area and dropped the wires through that, and then covered up the hole with these cable glands. That's what they call these devices. And then I secured the cable glands down to the roof with some Eternabond tape. That's this white tape. Now I did run out of Eternabond tape. I ran a little bit short, so you can see a little bit of the sealant that's below the Eternabond, which is a butyl tape, they call that. It's a butyl rubber that stays pliable for a long time, but it does need to get covered up, so I will have to come back and just finish that up. But pretty easy install all the way around. Now, I've talked about Eternabond tape before, and I had a number of people say that it was bad, it fails all the time. I don't know what people are talking about that way. I've had really good success with the Eternabond tape. With the vents, they've been in for several weeks now and have not had any problems with rain with those. And also from just my friends' experience, I've got a number of friends that have used Eternabond tape in the past. They haven't had any problems either. In fact, one buddy of mine lives up in Seattle, and he did the whole roof of his RV because he didn't like having to climb up and redoing the sealant. Most people use a sealant that's called a lap sealant, and with that you've got to constantly reapply it, if not every year, at least every other year. And he didn't really like having to do that, having to climb way up there, so he switched to this Eternabond tape a few years ago. And again, he lives in Seattle, hasn't had any trouble with it, and the better thing about that is he doesn't have to climb up on the roof anymore. So with talking with him, I decided to go with Eternabond tape, and we've had some pretty heavy rain since I've had this in, both of these things in, and haven't had any trouble with rain leakage at all. So I'm sold on the Eternabond, even though it seems like a lot of people aren't. So getting the solar panels hooked up was the biggest and most exciting project for me last week, because everything else that I wanted to do hinged on having power to be able to operate them. So for one, I've got my fridge running. That's a 40-quart set power fridge, a 12-volt fridge. So that runs directly off the battery. The battery is recharged off the solar panels. So you see everything was kind of waiting on the solar panels to be installed so I can get my fridge back running. So very happy about that, because I do try to do all of my own cooking. So now I'm kind of back to doing a lot more cooking and eating things that I want to eat. And then of course the other thing that I did here after I got the power hooked up is I hooked up my water pump to my sink. I did have the sink hooked up, but I didn't have a water pump hooked up. So bought a water pump. It is enabled with this little switch over here. So I turn the switch on, and that means if I want water, I just open up the tap, and I've got fresh running water so I can wash my hands, wash my dishes, which has been important since I've been doing a lot more cooking here lately. And I can try to give you a look at the pump. It is in a slightly inaccessible spot down here under the sink, and that was on purpose. Just I wanted it out of the way. So I've just got it mounted down here below the sink. This is not a name brand pump. This is a clone of the pump that I had in my last van, which I was very happy with. But that last pump was about $100 or more, so I decided to go with this one, which is about half the price. That is the name of it, TWERE. I don't know how that's supposed to be pronounced, but that's it. Works pretty good. It is a 3 gallon a minute flow, although I don't have it set quite that high because I don't really need it to be set that high. I'm just washing my hands and washing dishes. And this pump pulls water out of this fresh water tank. This is an RV 7 gallon water tank. I was hoping to get a slightly larger tank, but about 7 gallons is as much as I could really fit back here. Also, I was keeping in mind that 7 gallons is a lot of weight, so I decided that maybe 7 gallons is good enough. This is a very good, strong, heavy-duty tank. They're made out of polyethylene and they're very thick, so that will hold the weight of all that water. The other thing that I've done is I've got a couple of ratchet straps that are holding this in place, just to make sure that this doesn't move around as I drive. So one of the things I think is really important to do is just make sure that it's safe. All that weight, if you do slam on your brakes suddenly, you don't want all that weight flying around. So this has been working out pretty good. I do have a supply line or pickup tube that I had to drill a hole for in this tank. This tank was kind of an odd tank in that it only had the one opening here. This is about a 4-inch fill opening. I like the idea with this because I thought that it would be easy to fill with such a large opening, but also I could possibly get my hand down in there if I did need to clean it out at some point, which I seem to like to do every so many months. The way I fill my tanks up, they do tend to get a little bit of dirty water in them, or maybe it's just hard water that kind of precipitates out and I've got some stuff to clean out of the bottom. So that was kind of important. But being that this was just a blank tank other than the one opening here, I did have to drill a hole for the pickup tube or the supply tube. And this supply tube is a piece of PEX piping, and I've actually repurposed this for my old van. This is the old pickup tube that I use in my old van. A piece of PEX pipe, it's a polyethylene pipe, and you can get that at Home Depot. It has a shark bite end to it, that's what they call them, that converts the PEX to a 1/2-inch male thread, so that way I can hook up just a regular 1/2-inch supply line. This is something that I like to do. I like to find stuff that I can use from Home Depot versus an RV supply store. Sometimes I can't find an RV supply store, and if I can, they're often a lot more expensive parts-wise than Home Depot is. So this is what I came up with to kind of utilize parts that are a little bit easier to find and a lot less expensive. So that just hooks up to the inlet side of the pump, and the pump has no problem pulling water up and out of the tank, so it works just fine for that. I think I can go about 15 feet away from the water source that the pump will pull water from, so pretty good quality pump in that regards. And then the other side just comes out with another supply line and goes up to the handle of the sink and takes care of that. And then as far as the drain goes, I just have a little tube from Home Depot that I bought. This is a really flexible, I think it's all rubber tube, and it just comes straight down. And I am doing something slightly different than I used to do in my old van. In my old van, I went straight down into the ground. I just would drain straight to the ground. But in this case, I'm actually dumping into a large detergent container. My grandmother gave me this. I think it's about 2 gallons or very nearly. So that way I'm not dumping straight to the streets. Although if I did want to, I could just simply pull this rubber hose out and stick it down into the little drain that I have down in the floor here. You can kind of see that there. I do have it covered over with some window screening. That is some stainless steel window screening. I have it taped down on the one side, and then I have a magnet to hold it on the other side. I just don't want any mice or bugs crawling up in. So that way I can get to it easily if I need to. But I've actually just been utilizing the tank here, this little bucket system here, and it seems to be working just fine. With the size of it, I really only have to dump it once a day, so that's been working good. We'll see how long I last doing it this way. So most everything is up and running with the van, but I do have a number of things that I'm going to have to go back and kind of readdress. There's some things that I need to finish off, and there's some things that need to be fixed and changed out totally. One of those things is falling down above me, at the moment, I've been using an old moving blanket as a privacy curtain, and that has been blocking the back window, but it's not been working out very well. So I think next week I'll have a much better solution for that. If you want to tune in next week, we'll show you the improvement that will be happening. At least I hope so, because this is getting to be annoying. The one thing that I wasn't quite sure that I wanted to show you, because it does need quite a bit of refining and quite a bit of things taken care of, is my electrical panel. So obviously the solar panels pull in power and they deliver that power to my battery, but of course there are lots of little pieces in between. So I will show you the electrical panel, but before I show you that, I just want to point out that the electrical panel that I made up is a temporary electrical panel. It's just temporary, that's all it is. I had to get the power set up because I really needed to get power going. I do have some health issues, and so dealing with that meant that it would be so much easier if I just had a fridge and a way to cook for myself and all, and that meant that I just needed to have my power back on. So with that in mind, I made up a temporary, just temporary, little service panel. Okay, brace yourself. Here is the temporary electrical panel, and I know it looks a little bit of a mess, but unfortunately this panel is just temporary, and it's also not going to be in this spot for very long. Once I get to building out some shelving here on the passenger side of the van that will run along the passenger wall next to my bed, I'll be able to have a little bit better space to mount this. This panel can't really stay here because right behind here is the jack for the spare tire. So I did make this removable. I can remove it if I need to. Hopefully I don't need to remove it, since that will mean that I have a flat tire. But anyway, it's all good and it's all safe. Even though it might not look like it, it is all safe. It is safer for one major reason. Well, actually more than one major reason, but the biggest reason is that is a fuse, a proper fuse, which my old system did not have. Got away for almost 9 years in that old van without a real proper fuse or really good heavy-duty cabling, but I did, and since I am redoing all this, I decided to just clean things up and make things a little bit safer, so I went with a much better fuse now. I believe they call these ANL fuses. I'm not real happy with the quality of this fuse. The plastic is a little cheap, and I think if I hit that with something, it'll probably break. So not real happy with the quality of it, but the fuse itself is good. So that's the important part. The other big improvement I've made are these bus bars here. So these bus bars, you can kind of think of them as being an extension of battery terminals. So instead of stacking up all of these wires one on top of another on top of the battery terminals directly to the battery, these bus bars allow me to spread these wires out. And that's an important thing because you can get some voltage drop and amperage drop across the wires if they are stacked together. Again, I had that for 9 years in the old van, never had a problem, but we're starting new and we're trying to just clean things up a little bit, make things safer. So this is what I came up with. I am reusing my old fuse panel. This panel will be used just for lighting mostly. And then of course there are the big things here. These are the charge controllers. Kind of the important thing here because these interface power between the solar panels and my battery. Now I know it might seem a little bit odd that I have a charge controller for each solar panel. These charge controllers are hooked up to just one singular battery, so that may seem a bit odd to do it that way, but there are some advantages. This is the way I did it in my old van. Since my old van had 2 solar panels, I used these 2 charge controllers to kind of separate the power from them and be able to deliver power to my one single battery no matter what. So it was a little more important with my old system because those old panels would really vary in the power that they would put out depending on the sun that was hitting them. Since these panels are much better at producing power even when they are partially shaded, it's probably not such a necessary thing to have a charge controller for each panel, but that is the way I'm doing it just because I've got the charge controllers already. I'm just reusing them, repurposing them. But I also think that there's some benefit to doing it this way. In the past, I have had some issues with charge controllers breaking, and since I only had one charge controller back then, when the charge controller broke, that meant I was getting no power into my system at all. So I do like kind of the redundancy of having two separate solar panels delivering power to one battery with two separate charge controllers, because that means if one of them were to fail in any way, I should still be getting power from the other one. It makes a complete system, even though it does kind of seem a little bit odd that I've got two separate systems delivering power to one single battery, but it's worked out really well for me for the last year or so. And what has also worked out really well for the past few years is my battery. That is a 100 amp hour battery made by a company called Chins. Funny name, I don't know why they're named that way, but it's been a great battery. So I'm just, again, reusing that from the old van into the new van because it's just been a really good battery. Haven't had any trouble with it whatsoever. Now there is something that you may have noticed here that is missing from my power system, and that is an inverter. Over the last 9 years, I've had a really hard time explaining my philosophy with using solar power in my van, which is just this. I want a simple electrical system. I want it to be as simple as I possibly can make it. For one, I'm not an electrical engineer or an electrician, so I need it to be simple so that I understand it. If I don't understand it, I can't build it to start with, and I can't fix it if that needs to happen down the road. So I run a 12-volt system, doesn't have an inverter. This is DC powered 12-volt system only. That's what I have been doing over the last 9 years, and it's worked really well for me. I haven't found the need to take that 12-volt DC power and convert it to 120-volt AC power like you would have in a normal house. It's not something that I've found that I've needed. Now there are some times where I do need to plug something into a regular AC outlet, and for those times, those very few times, I do have a portable power supply that does have a built-in inverter in it. So that takes care of that for me. But for my main system that runs all the important things, meaning my fridge, my lights, how I charge my phone, my water pump, my fans, my ventilation fans inside the van, all of that is running on solar power off of a 12 volt only DC powered system. That way it's a nice simple system, and it also keeps the costs down, because if I were to add an inverter into the system, that would require more cost. Not only the inverter itself, but all the cabling for the inverter and all the cabling that runs to all the systems, I would have to upgrade. So it'd be more money on top of being something that I just don't really understand, or something that I really have a need for at all. And another thing I haven't found the need for over the last 9 years is to have alternator charging or engine charging to supplement my solar power. It's just not something that I have needed, although for some reason this has caused a lot of ire with people. They seem to get pretty upset with me for the fact that I'm running just on solar power. I'm not really sure why that is, but people like to lecture me about the fact that I should have engine charging, and I do understand that that is kind of more normal. Seems like that's what most people want to do. I've always just not driven a whole lot. It's part of my name here, StaticCampervan. The static is for a reason. I don't drive a whole lot, even though I do have a newer van here that is capable of driving. I just don't drive very much. So that's part of the reason that I am going solar only. But the other part of the reason is I just have found that solar provides all the power that I need. I guess I can say this in a different way, because I'm sure I'm going to get lectured here on this video too in the comments, and I'll get emails. Although if you do want to email me, do understand that I'm about a year behind on emails. So if you're going to try to lecture me on an email, I'll see it next year maybe. Anyway, so looking at this from my personal point of view, over the last 9 years, I've had 4 times where I've run out of power. I've run out of solar power. and that equaled about 5 hours of time. So over the last 9 years, just to repeat, over the last 9 years, I have not had solar for 5 hours. Solar power that provided all the power that I needed for 5 hours. So 5 hours over the last 9 years. I would say solar is working pretty good for me. And we need to keep in mind that I had a pretty minimal setup with my last van. Yes, I did only have the singular 100 amp hour battery, but I had a lot less solar. I only had about 250 watts of solar panels on my roof, where now I have 400, and these panels work much better. I mean, I'm really amazed at how much power these panels put out. So I don't see a very big possibility of me putting in an engine charging going forward. A DC to DC charger just doesn't make any sense to me. I've gotten by pretty good over the last 9 years without it, so I think going forward I'm not really going to need it, and I have absolutely no plans of adding a DC to DC charger or engine charging anytime soon, even though I know I'm going to get lectured a lot about it. I'm also going to get lectured about the look of this this electrical panel, which, I'm thinking back now, I wished at one point I would have just mentioned, maybe even just in passing, that this panel is just temporary. Why didn't I mention that this is just a temporary panel? I don't know. I never seem to learn, do I? I should also just mention that 2 of the 4 times that I ran out of power weren't because I wasn't getting enough power, enough solar power in. It was because of equipment failures. I had some charge controller issues at one time, and because the charge controller was not working, I was getting solar power and enough solar power, it just was not delivering that power to my battery. So that's one of the reasons why I've switched to this 2 charge controller setup. So hopefully that won't happen in the future, although I am using Victron charge controllers, which I think are probably the best charge controllers that money can buy. So there's not much of a likelihood that they are going to fail like my old charge controllers did. But I do like the redundancy. It's not that much more to just buy another charge controller and a little more wire and wire both of them into the same singular battery. I just think it makes a lot of sense. And again, I'm doing this because of my experience. I think that that's a big thing. We all have experiences that make us do things the way we do them, and that's why I am doing the 2 charge controller setup here that I am running. Hopefully you can excuse me for a moment here. I'm grinding up some coffee and got the kettle on so that I can get some coffee made for myself, and then we'll talk about some of the things that have not worked out quite so well, which is one of the reasons why I talked about mounting the solar panels a little bit oddly up there. We'll talk about that, but I've just got to get some coffee in me first. You understand. Or maybe you don't, I don't know. Okay, now I can concentrate since I have my coffee, even though this is decaf, if you are wondering. I still am drinking decaf. I know some of you are keeping track of that. I'm trying not to think about it so much. So some of the things that haven't worked out quite so well, we've talked about the back window cover. I did find out from my grandmother that she's working on something for me, so I have a much better solution for that. I think even as close as tonight, so you'll see that next week. Some of the other things that have been a difficulty are the lights. So in my last van, I bought a little pack of RV lights, and they seemed like that they would be the perfect solution for me. They're low wattage. I could change the light output on them. They just seem perfect, except that they have not held up. I still have one up here, and it still sort of works, but that's at full power. Now I know it's during the day and there's lots of light out, but that is about 1/3 of the power that they should be operating at. Just one day I noticed it just dim all of a sudden, and I thought, well, that's kind of weird, and fiddled with it, and of course it's just not working correctly. So it still works, but not well. So not not usable. So I had to find a solution for it, and I couldn't find anything on Amazon, nor did I really want to buy anything on Amazon again. I've been buying a lot from them. So I went down to IKEA. Since I'm here in Los Angeles, there is an IKEA. Spent quite a bit of money in IKEA, but they have these USB tap lights. So I've got one here, and puts out kind of a warm light. I would prefer it maybe not be quite so warm, but it's worked out really well. I've just stuck it up to the ceiling with some Velcro, and it plugs into a little box I have here, a little breakout box I have here that has a bunch of USB and USB-C ports on it. So I've got the ports that tie directly into my battery. So these run off of solar. Kind of solves the problem with having to buy something from Amazon. Put another one over here because I needed a little more task lighting. I found these just by accident. I wanted just a little light, and so I bought a smaller one, which I have back here. This one puts out very little light, but it puts out good light, and it works just the same, little tap light just like the other ones. This was $3.50, which is why I bought it at IKEA. When I realized it worked so well, I went back and got these two. These are about $13 a piece, but I think well worth it. And they've got a really long cable on them. I think it's like 11 feet long or something, so works out really good. So it kind of solves my lighting issue for now. I did actually put another light, well, two more actually. I've got another light under here, and it has a little eye on it. So at night, if I wake up and I need to take my medication and just need to be able to see a little bit better, I just wave my hand under here, and I've got light on my tabletop. It doesn't work quite so well for a work surface, but it works really good for at night if I just need a little bit of light. And then I stuck another one of these same ones on the back pillar here so that I have a little more light in front of my sink when I'm sitting here. So that one works out pretty good. I don't have the little motion sensor turned on it. I just turn it on and off as I need it. So those are a couple little things that didn't quite go so well, but I've found fixes for. Now the bigger one here is out here on the solar panels, of course. So I mounted these panels in kind of an odd way. I know that I could have just mounted the panel directly to the unistrut, but instead I opted to use these Z brackets or Z brackets if you're watching from across the pond. I like the design of these Z brackets. They're from a company called New Power, and they have several little mounting points on them. So I kind of like the idea that I was able to, I don't know if I can see it in there, but I was able to actually mount 2 bolts through the bracket into the solar panel, which I really liked. I did drill out, make it possible that I could add a second bolt through the bracket into the unistrut. But once I got this together, I realized it's so good and solid this way that I don't think I'm going to add a second bolt through this. But I did this for a few different reasons. So one of the reasons is a practical reason. If I were to try to mount these together, there really isn't a lot of room to drop a bolt through this little channel here and down through the unistrut. About the biggest bolt I think I can get is about 3/4 of an inch, and that would have made it really tight working with this. The other thing that I was keeping in mind is that I am not real pleased with these Harbor Freight cross rails. So I think that while I am going to use them for a little while, I think that they're not a good long-term solution. So I would rather have a mechanical fastener than the way that these rails work, in that they kind of just tighten down and use friction to hold on. So I might go with a different brand, but same type of crossbeam, or I might try to build something. I think that might be the better option in the future. But taking that in mind, I'm probably going to have to remove this at some point, the whole contraption here at some point, so that I can replace these cross beams. So if I had mounted these solar panels directly to the unistrut, it would have meant that the nuts and bolts would have been up inside the unistrut here, And since I am using stainless steel hardware, the stainless steel doesn't corrode, but it does kind of fuse together over time. So if I took this apart quickly, wouldn't be an issue, but if I were running this for a little while, I may find that the bolts and nuts are fused together, and I'll have to cut these off. So putting it together this way means I don't have to cut through into any of the pieces here. It leaves all the hardware exposed, so I'll easily be able to cut them off in the future. At first I was thinking that this was a little bit too tall. I didn't like that this was set up kind of tall. Of course I need room to clear my, my vents, but that's not a whole lot of room. But after looking at this and actually talking to my grandmother about this, she was saying, like, why do you want to set the panels lower? And I said, well, at one time, I actually ran into a problem in downtown Portland where I had to back out of a parking garage because I wasn't able to fit in there. And she said something very interesting and very true. She said, how often do you really park in a parking garage anymore? And that's when I realized I never actually park in parking garages anymore. And so that little bit of information meant that I'm okay with this setup here, even though it looks a little bit goofy and it is a little bit tall. It's not really going to affect me in any way, other than the fact that if I do need to pull this apart at some point in the future, it will be a lot easier cutting these bolts off if they're not buried in this channel of the unistrut. So there we go. So those are the main highlights and lowlights with the build so far. Got a lot more to do, but it's just amazing how much I've been able to get done the last few weeks here on this van. A lot more than I expected to get done, and I think I said that the last video I put out. So just really getting a lot done and getting the van really comfortable. The van's maybe not quite as comfortable yet as my old van. There we go, there's my old van. But it's getting close, and the van is actually very comfortable now, so I'm pretty content now just to kind of sit back and enjoy it a little bit. I want to get back to living instead of camping like I have been over the last month. So that's kind of where I'm at now. Lots of good stuff going on. Very excited about these solar panels and all the power I have. Actually thinking about turning on my freezer and getting some ice cream. I probably won't do that, but you know, I've got all this power that I don't know what to do with. Anyway, we're in good shape now and very comfortable. So that's the most important thing. That's what I was kind of working towards. So the next thing is getting back to enjoying life and not thinking about building stuff. That's next. So hopefully you'll join me next time. And if you're not subscribed, please subscribe and hit the little thumbs up button if you'd like to or not, or hit the thumbs down button. I don't know, whichever one seems more appropriate. But whatever you do, thanks for watching. I really appreciate it.